Jai Hind to all. My name is Babita. I am assistant professor in MCA department at Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College, Ghaziabad. So today we are coming with a new lecture in the series of computer network. The code is BMC 303 and this course is derived from the MCA course, MCA third semester. So basically today's topic is an introduction about the IP address. So in this lecture only we understand the concept of IP address and the different kind of sub-concepts related to the IP address. And in the next lecture, I definitely work with the IP addressing practical part. So in this lecture, this is only the introductory part about the IP address. So let's get started. On the completion of this lecture, the learner definitely learn about the IP addressing. So what do you mean by the IP addressing? Basically, what is the core concept? And next we will talk about the types of IP address. So here we have more than several categories that we will basis on the some kind of scenarios. It may be functionality, it may be some scope, in other words that type of assignments, right? And next we will talk about the IP structure. You can say the IP address format structure, right? And next we will talk about the how it works simply with the real life example or in real life scenarios. So this is the content for this today's lecture, and let's start with the concept of IP address. So basically the IP address is just like an address in a simple real life, we can say the postal address. So in the computer terminology, IP address is a unique identifier assigned to a device in a network. As you know, before we will complete a lecture in which we are talking about some kind of topologies, because these topologies provide the arrangement of the devices in a particular network. So how all devices are connecting with each other in a single network. And now the question is this, ki all devices that we will connect in a particular network, how can the sender identify the receiver, intended receiver? So basically each device has a specific address. That address is nothing but it is a IP address, because this address provide the facility to identify a particular user, or you can say the particular device. How can we understand this particular scenario? So here I am drawing a diagram in which we have a different kind of devices. Let's say device 1, device 2, device 3 and device 4, right? And let's suppose ki here we have a particular device and that want to send the message, that wants to some kind of information sharing on the medium. So among the all devices, this particular device how can recognize a particular device through to which it sends the data, it will share the data. So here we have each device having a address, and this address is nothing but it is a IP address. What we call it as a IP address, because IP address is the unique address just like our address of home. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम बात करें कि हमारे घर की बात करें, लाइक हमारा कोई पोस्टल या कोई पोस्ट हमारे लिए भेजा गया है, तो हाउ द पोस्टल मैन या पोस्टमैन आइडेंटिफाई आर एड्रेस, मतलब एड्रेस ऑफ द our house. So basically these particular address is a IP address because this device uniquely identify through this address. So how can recognize how can identify senders the address of the intended receiver to send the data. So this is the core concept. It is enabling communication between the device, and it serves primarily for two purposes. Basically identify the device among the available or connecting devices and locating it within a network. ये अगर हमें पता चल जाता है कि I want to communicate with this device, Now the question is where it is located. So this also identified by the IP address. Next, we will talk about the structure of the IP address. So basically here we have the concept IP address, and this IP address is divided into two categories, in which first particular portion is defined the network identification, and second portion is defined or determined the host address. What do you mean by network address and what do you mean by host address? Now the question is arise, right? So what do you mean by, let's suppose ki here we have a network in which I have a more than one devices, right? And also have another network, and here we have also some other devices. Now let's say ki here we have a system, and this system wants to communicate with a particular device or with a particular user. Now it will first recognize the network. That means कि ये किसके साथ communicate करना चाहता है, either this network or either this network. Just for example, we are taking an example of university campus. In a university campus, here we have a different departments like MCA departments, B.Tech departments, and mechanical engineering departments or civil engineering departments. So let's say कि the server system या server user server system wants to communicate through to which department. So firstly it will recognize the network, and then it will recognize the particular system or particular user to communicate further. So the question is ki firstly we recognize the network and then we recognize the host, because in a network we have a more than one system or more than one devices. नाउ द क्वेश्चन कि मुझे इनमें से कौन से डिवाइस के साथ कम्युनिकेट करना है, दैट विल बी आइडेंटिफाइड थ्रू द host ID. So the IP address is classified into two particular category, in which we have a network address and host address. How many network address and how many host address we will here, we will have, right? How many host address? That will be defined by the type of the class in a IP address, right? And this is the next content of the lecture, because I will discuss this particular portion in the next video, in which we are talking about some practical scenario of the IP address. In this session only we are introduce the core concept of the IP address. So how many network addresses we will have here, and how many host address we have in the particular scenario is determined by the type of the class, right? So next the host portion या host address, network portion and network address identify the network to which the device belongs. ठीक है? And next, host address, or you can say the host portion, determine the specific device within the network, right? And for example, I am taking a real life example to understand betterly about this concept. Let's say ki house number 25, sector 10 in Noida. So here the sector and city, because we are locating in a particular city. So this is a city, and this city is considered as a network ID, right? Because in a city we have thousands of houses and thousands of residentials, and what is the particular address of your house, that will considered host ID. Clear? By through this real life example you will understand the concept ki what is the scenario of dividing a IP address into network address or host address. So basically network address is just determine the overall network identification, and the host address is determined to a particular device. Next, we will talk about the IP type of IP addresses. So basically, the type of IP addresses is not determined on the single perception, on the basis of single perception. Here we have a different kinds of scenarios. Through on the basis of these scenarios, we are dividing into categories, right? So here we have a first approach on the basis of IP addresses divided, the addressing scope. So we will classify IP address on the basis of scope. So on the basis of scope, the IP address is divided into two categories, in which we are talking about a public IP address and a private IP address. Next, we have the category basis on a IP version. So how many versions of IP address we have now? So we will talk about the IP address IPv4 and IPv6. So these are the version. Yeah, you can say the IPv4 and IPv6 is the version of the IP address. Next, we will talk about the types of the IP address on the basis of assignment. Assignment, that means we are talking about the yes. Here we have the two type of assignments. Either we statically assign a IP address, or either we dynamically assign the IP address. So how they are work, yeah, how can we implement in a IP addressing approach? We will discuss one by one. First of all, on the basis of scope. Scope is determined the coverage area of the particular scenario, right? So here we have a public IP address and private IP address. As its name implies, the meaning public IP address, that is a broadband, right? Yeah, you can say across the internet, across the world we are talking about, right? So unique identification across the internet assigned by the ISP, that is a internet service provider, to the device that directly access the internet. So these type of addresses considered as a public IP addresses, because they have the access across the world, right? Next, we will talk about the private IP address. So private IP address, that type of network, yeah, we will provide the addressing in a private network. Let's suppose ki we have a particular subscription of a particular network, and in which, या मैं ये कहूँ कि let's suppose कि very first time when you are hosting a particular website, you need a particular address, then ISP yeah, internet service provider provide a particular address to your server, and then your server is connecting to your mobile, laptop and other devices which are available at your home. So that type of addressing is considered as a private addressing, and these type of addressing is need to convert by using NAT, that is a network address translation for external communication. If some external device wants to communicate with your particular private device, so basically here we have a need of a translation, because these addresses are well secure, right? So for example, I'm taking an example to explain the concept betterly. So here if you have a host particular website on your server at home, and your ISP must assign a public address. Very first time, if I'm talking about the server on which you are hosting a website, right? So it will assign a public address, but your server around the world can access your site. See, this is a public address. If I'm talking about all the devices that are available at your home, let's say your mobile phone, your watch, your other device that are connecting to a particular network, that will consider, yeah, that will have a particular address. This will considered as a private address. Next, we have the IP address classification on the basis of version. So here we have two versions, IPv4 and IPv6, Internet Protocol version 4. So it is a 32-bit address format in which we have a possibility of 4 million unique addresses. What do you mean by it? Key, for example, if I am having a particular network and this network have 32 bits capability, that means I'm generating 2 raised to power 30 addresses through this combination, and yeah, we can design the using combination, right? So it arounds a 4 billion unique addresses. It consists of 4 octants of numbers, 4 octants, yeah, you can say set of 4 set of numbers separated by a dot, right? So if I'm talking about 32 bits dividation, so here we have a combination of 8 bit, combination of 8 bits. So how many partition we will divide of using 8-bit combination? How many? 8-bit combination. So it will be 4, right? So it will be 4. So that's why it is called as a 4 octant, because we are dividing 32 bits into group of 4, which having 8 bit in each group, right? So this format can support over 4 billion unique addresses, and each octant having 8 bits or bytes, and that can have the value of 0 to 255, because if I am calculating 2 raised to power 8, so it will considered as a, yeah, it will derived, yeah, it generate 256 bits, and because we are starting from 0, that's why it will having the range 0 to 255, right? So this is the core concept in which we have a particular IP address that will having a 32 bits in the addressing part, in which let's say this is a first octant, and this second octant, and this third octet, and this is a fourth octet. So these octets is determined ki how many network ID and how many host ID. So basically here we have the classification of 32 bits into 4 octants, or each octant having 8 bits combination, and this address may have the range 0 to 255, right? Next we have the address IPv6. So Internet Protocol version 6, this address were created to overcome the problem of the IPv4, in which we have the shortage of the IP addresses, and this provide the limit using 128 bits instead of 32 bit, offering vastly greater number of the possible addresses. So basically if we have a thousands of millions of and trillions of the addresses, so basically we will use this particular version of the IP address. Next we will talk about the classification of IP address basis on the function. So here we have a 4 type of classification, in which we have a unicast IP address. So the unicast specify the meaning in which one-to-one communication. What do you mean by one-to-one communication? In which we have a particular sender and receiver, and the sender sends some message over the internet, and the receiver will receive that particular message. So here we have the addressing, in which sender must aware in advance of the receiver address. Like for example, I am sending a mail. So basically, before sending the mail, I must have the address of that particular receiver. So this is the core concept. Yeah, we can say this type of addressing is using in the email, yeah, FTP or SMTP, right? Next, we will talk about the broadcast IP address. So the broadcast, as its name implies the meaning, in which we have the opportunity to broadcast the message. For example, I don't know the address of the user to which I want to send the message. So firstly, I will send a message over the network, and this message is broadcast to all the possible connected users, or you can say the devices, and through which because whenever I will broadcast any type of message, that surely we receive a particular feedback through the connecting users, right? So one to all, this particular working process or working scenario is one to all. That means the message will forecast for everyone that will connect to the internet, yeah, network, right? So that type of IP addressing scenario is used in the MAC addresses on the basis of, yeah, you can say the address resolution protocols, in which we have a IP address, but we want to know the MAC address of that particular user, right? And next we have the multicast IP addressing system. So in which we are selecting the users, more than one users, to communicate, and we will send the message only to some selected users, right? I'm taking an example to explain this scenario. Yes, just for example, here we have a sender, and this sender having connection with more than one devices. Let's say here we have, right, here we have, but this particular system, yeah, this particular user select only one of them, some users, right? यानी कि हमारे पास जितने भी अवेलेबल कनेक्टिंग डिवाइसेस हैं, उनमें से हमने कुछ को सिलेक्ट किया है टू forecast या to broadcast the message, and these particular connecting devices will respond back to the sender, right? So these type of a scenario is considered into the multicast IP addressing. Just for example, we are organizing a Zoom meeting, and this Zoom meeting link is providing to my connecting audience, or you can say my students, and those having the link of this particular meeting will join the session, right? So this is approach of multicast IP addressing. Next we will talk about the anycast IP addressing. So it will considered to one to nearest. One to nearest, that means having a thousands of devices which is connecting through a network, but I am sharing the information, I am sharing the message only the nearest system or nearest devices which are connecting through the server system, right? So in which we having a, let's say ki, this is the nearest device. So I am just sharing these systems. Yeah, I am sharing message to these systems. So that type of a scenario is considered in a anycast. So one to nearest communication often used in the content delivering network, right? We will call as a CDN. So basically the broadcast is supported by the IPv4 but not supported by the IPv6. But anycast is supported by the IPv6 or also implemented by the IPv4. So this is the main concept about the IP addressing classification on the basis of function. Next, we will talk about the classification on the basis of assignment. So basically the question is this, in how many ways we can assign a IP address. So basically the answer is in a 2 ways. Either we statically or either we dynamically assign the IP address. If I am talking about the static IP address assigning process, so in which the IP address is assigned to the user manually or statically. That means that type of address is considered as in a permanent nature, and the device typically important for the server or device that need a constant address, right? And it provide the reliable services for the network and require regular access, such as the website remote management system, right? Next, in which we are talking about the dynamic IP address allocation. So in this scenario, we are assigning a IP address dynamically. In advance, we just don't know about the user, and this particular user connecting dynamically to the network, and that at that time we are assigning a particular address, and this address is considered as a dynamically allocating address. So I am taking the example of this scenario, DHCP. This will provide the facility of dynamically allocation of the IP address and considered as a dynamic host configuration protocol, right? And this particular protocol handle that type of scenario. It will very cost effective, because whenever we have a need, we will assign the IP address. When just suppose ki I am not connecting with the network, this IP address is released from that system. And efficient for providers. Also, it is important for the service provider, because perfect for consumer devices that do not require permanent addresses. Because if I am connecting to a network, definitely I will charge for this facility. If I don't have the requirement to access the network, at that time I will release the connection and not need to pay the cost, right? So that's why this type of allocation of IP addressing is considered cost effective and very efficient for the providers as well as consumers. So thank you so much. And with this lecture, I will stop my one point is remaining, how IP addresses work. So IP address uniquely identify a device on a network, and when data is sent, I just simply explain the scenario through which we are implementing the concept of a IP address. So firstly, when we send the data over the network, and the routers use the network part of the address, because through this part we recognize the network to which I want to communicate, and carried out the information to that network, and the host part will deliver the data to a exact device. So this is the responsibility of router, because every information that will share on the medium or that will share on the network will carried out by the routers. Router is the responsible device that carries the information, or you can say the message, from one place to another place, right? So here we have a sender, and this sender sends some data packets over the network, and the next functionality is carry over by the router, and router recognize. Firstly, router check the network part or the host part. Through the network part, it will recognize the network to which I have to connected, and the host part will determine the exact location of the device where I want to send the message. So this is the responsibility, and this will implement the scenario IP addressing will work, right? Because IP address is only tells about the exact identification of the network and exact location of the user. So thank you so much with this content.